Their online weather watcher.
Storm clouds gather in the Alabama sky. For now, a distant flash of lightning, a low rumble of thunder. But in the blink of an eye, these storms could change your life forever.
We have a photographer now who has a visual sighting of a tornado.
12, I've got 7 free if we need them now. 12, I'm just passing Lynn Haven here. You got a lot of damage in Lynn Haven. A lot of power lines down, the trees down, roofs off houses. Engine 6, come on out here to Lynn Haven and check all these people out here.
For those of you watching us in Brookwood, in Coling, in Vance, anywhere along Interstate 59, US 11, Alabama Highway 216, we strongly recommend that you go to a safe place right now.
In Alabama, severe weather can strike anyone, anywhere, anytime.
We were watching it. It makes you stop and think. You just heard things cracking, and before I could cover my oldest son's head up, he said, Mom, I just saw a tree come through the roof.
Just cars and trees strode everywhere. It looks like a lot of windows broke out.
It was going wild, and of course I hung up and, you know, just frightened me half to death. You just can't imagine, honey, how awful that was. The noise and the window, you know, everything was just beginning to, you know, just move around. And
it is a devastating situation for that store.
I can imagine. Talking about devastating situation for that store. This one certainly has suffered or received its share of devastation. This is the Big B Revco drugstore, which I guess you could say is no more. As you can see, the roof has collapsed. And as you can see, obviously, you look.
Tornadoes.
Now, we've seen troopers patrolling up and down the interstate. They have had numerous accidents here.
Snowstorms. Flash floods. Alabama's severe weather can turn deadly in seconds, leaving no time to plan, no time to think. You must be prepared. You must know when to act. And what you learn tonight could save your life. This is ABC 3340's Storm Alert 98 Tour. Now, here's James Spann.
Good evening and welcome to Storm Alert 98. Severe weather in Alabama is not something that can be taken lightly. We have storms of all kinds that damage property, destroy lives, and even kill people. For the next hour, we are going to show you just how dangerous our weather can be. And we'll give you the information you need to protect you and your family. Joining me tonight is the rest of the ABC 3340 weather team, meteorologists Mark Prater and John Oldshue.
And tonight, of course, is a very special night for us here at ABC 3340 after a very special month as we traveled across much of central Alabama, presenting shows not only in high school auditoriums, but also in civic centers.
About 300 people have greeted us at every location. We began in Anniston, where our first show was a huge success. Then we took the show to Hillcrest High School in Tuscaloosa. And finally wrapped up at the Alabama Power Building in Birmingham. Audience members from all 3 stops have told us they've learned things that will change the way they watch the weather. Now we want to bring that information to all of you.
You see us on television, so what better place to start than our TV station to help you and your family weather the storms? Welcome to our quick tour of the ABC 3340 Weather Center. And by the way, to tour the Weather Center, you also have to tour the studio. You see, we put our office in the studio for one main reason. Whenever we have severe weather, we're here with the lights and the cameras, so it just takes an instant to get in front of this big green wall and put the information on the air. And by the way, this is a green wall in the studio, but when you watch us at home, it looks like this. It looks like we're standing in front of the maps and the satellite images and the radar. The way it works, anything that's seen as green by the camera will electronically turn into the maps we show you. And I look at television monitors like that. There's Bill Castle. Bill, wave at everybody. That lets us see what we're pointing at. In fact, look at the camera here. You'll actually see myself in that camera lens, and it's just like looking in a mirror. Now, let me show you the office. Of course, this is the ABC 3340 news set where the news anchors do their work, and our office is stashed over here in the corner. And it would take probably an hour to go through all of this. This is the quick tour. First off, we have ham radio gear. We can listen to storm spotters in the field. I am a licensed ham radio operator. My call sign is WO4W. John Oldshue has a license as well. Prater is working on his. In addition to that, we have a lot of computers. And quickly, this is our computer we use to update the website, the ABC 3340 Weather Center online. We have over 1 million hits a month on that website. The main graphics workstations are right here in front of me, and this is a fascinating system. The one you see right here, this does three-dimensional rendering of the weather. It's a fancy computer system that was actually used in the movie Jurassic Park, and you can see a big impressive storm complex down around Miami. With this system, this determines what you actually see on television every night during our newscast. This is the Pinpoint Neighborhood Weather Net. We were the first television station in north central Alabama to introduce this. It's wonderful the way it works. This is live weather data from 7 reporting stations we have all over the state. We can show rain, temperature, wind, any parameter that we want. Here's Storm Alert. This is the system that puts the map on the screen that shows the watches and the warnings. Not exactly the best time to demonstrate that because right now there's nothing there, but that lets us show those warnings immediately the second they're posted by the National Weather Service. And this jewel right here is wonderful. It's our Pinpoint Doppler radar, most powerful broadcast Doppler radar in the state. We've zoomed in real closely here on Anniston, and you can see the street level mapping that we can show. And needless to say, that's wonderful during times of severe weather. Now, the radar itself is not here. It's on a mountaintop down in northern Shelby County. We control the radar from here. This is our national lightning network. It's wonderful here. We can show cloud-to-ground lightning strikes. We loop that over the past 4 or 5 hours. A great way to show areas of thunderstorms. And one more item to show you, weather instruments. You have to have those in a weather office. About a 1/4 inch of rain today, 47 degrees, the wind out of the east at about 6 miles per hour. The only thing we don't have, a window, but we'll get that one day. In all seriousness, though, we really take severe weather like no other television station. I've been in this business for 20 years, and this is the first station I've ever worked at that gives us the green light to go on the air anytime we have severe weather and actually stay on the air until the severe weather threat is over.
And back in 1997, January 24th, we proved that by staying on the air continuously for 11 hours as the Tuscaloosa tornado struck Tuscaloosa County. And, of course, that coverage continued again in May when we stayed on the air for 9 hours continuously as we had tornadoes as well as severe weather moving across much of North Alabama.
I'm the lucky one. We use StormLink to go into the storms and track severe weather. I've been out on the leading edge of severe thunderstorms, dropping tornadoes. I've been in more snow than I care to imagine, and we even took StormLink into a hurricane. And we'd like to show you StormLink and what its capabilities are.
Wind gust up to 45 miles per hour, 2 inches of rain. It's starting to slack off now. I want to show you the ocean out there, though. That doesn't look good at all. Winds are starting to pick up once again, starting to get some gusts up around 40 miles per hour. Sustained wind averaging right near around 25 or 30 miles per hour. Most of this fell in kind of a semi-liquid form. I'm ABC 3340 meteorologist John Oldshue, and I mainly work on the weekends, but let me tell you about the funnest part of my job, and it deals with this, ABC 3340 StormLink. We use this to go out into severe weather, whether it be tornadoes, hurricanes, or snowstorms, and I get to drive it. Drive in there and take weather measurements for the station, and we try to track the weather with it. Show you some of the instruments up front here that I use. Mainly the big stuff up here is the amateur radios. Both James Spann and I are ham radio operators, and we use these to monitor the other storm spotters out in the field and also communicate any information that we need to them. Also have a laptop computer up there to help me record the weather information. The big stuff, though, is here in the back. First off, here are the weather instruments up on top where we do all the recording. Of course, you've got your wind gauge, a thermometer, and a big rain gauge over there. And where we take those measurements are down here with this console. This is a Texas Weather Instruments console, and it basically scans through all those instruments constantly and gives us readings that we can feed back to the station and let them know what's going on. Here's the other big weather instrument. We've got a television there to monitor the station, but this laptop computer really helps me out. What it does is take in live radar data, and also it takes in global positioning satellite data and tells me exactly where I am in the state down to 10 feet and helps guide me into the storm, so I'll know exactly where the strongest part of the storm is and where I need to go in there. It's a great job. I love doing it, and I love driving ABC 3340 StormLink around the state monitoring severe weather.
We've got much more to tell you tonight, and including we're going to take you into the eye of a hurricane as we talk about hurricanes and what you need to do if a storm was to hit Alabama's coastline.
And we'll take you along the path of nature's most violent storm, the kind of storm that has left its mark on central Alabama many times over. Those stories and more when Storm Alert 98 continues. Stay with us. Severe thunderstorms and tornadoes can happen in Alabama any day of the year. But the prime severe weather season for the southern United States, springtime, the months of March, April, and May, where all of the various parameters come together at times for violent thunderstorms. Across our country last year, the most violent tornado touched down in Jarrell, Texas. The tornado started as a smaller F1 tornado with sustained winds of approximately 100 miles per hour at this stage. But throughout that afternoon, the storm continued to grow stronger, and it produced a swath of damage and loss of life. In fact, this tornado in Jarrell, which, by the way, is in the Texas Hill Country north of Austin, killed over 24 people. The damage was incredible. In fact, these scenes were taken roughly along Interstate Highway 35 near Jarrell, north of Austin. In a moment, you can see traffic actually traveling up and down Interstate 35 as the tornado continued to grow stronger. And in moments, you'll begin to see large hail falling from this severe thunderstorm. Hailstones almost the size of baseballs. And notice the width of that incredible tornado in the background. At one point, the base of this tornado was over 1 mile wide. And ultimately, the ranking was an F5. That means sustained winds in excess of 216 miles per hour. Damage in many cases was complete in this tragedy. That was last year. More recently, we had an example of what Mother Nature can do in the state of Florida. We had a violent tornado outbreak on Sunday night, February 22nd, killing over 3 dozen people. The El Nino-enhanced southern branch of the jet stream, responsible for a powerhouse storm in the Gulf of Mexico, moving into central Florida. Tornadoes like this can happen in Alabama and the Plain States, but rarely do they happen down in central Florida. So needless to say, with what we've seen in Texas and Florida, here in Alabama, we must be ready for severe weather. And let's begin with the definition of severe weather. We often mention the chance of severe thunderstorms on ABC 3340 News, but you need to know the exact definition of a severe thunderstorm. A severe thunderstorm must have one of two things. The first thing would be large hail, larger than 3/4 of an inch in diameter. That's approximately the size of a quarter. If the hail is smaller than that, it is not severe. The other thing that can make a storm severe, high wind. And by that, we're talking winds 58 miles per hour or greater. Now, the worst kind of severe thunderstorm is a supercell thunderstorm. This diagram shows a supercell. Those are out there by themselves, not in a squall line. Along the leading edge, heavy rain and large hail. On the back part of the storm, a rain-free base and a lowering of that rain-free base called a wall cloud. Wall clouds develop and often mean that tornadoes are about to form from a thunderstorm. They're often hard to see in Alabama because of rain that blocks your view along with hills and trees. Next graphic will actually show a wall cloud taken from the southern plain states. Within 15 minutes, a violent tornado did drop from that thunderstorm. And of course, tornadoes is what we have to watch for. That particular photograph, one of the most violent tornadoes on record in this country, that struck Wichita Falls, Texas on April 10th, 1979, killing over 50 people, an F5 tornado. We've had storms like that before in Alabama, and they will happen again. And when they happen again, we must be ready. Tornadoes are nature's most violent storm. They pack winds as high as 250 miles per hour, and they strike Alabama all too often, an average about 20 times a year, often with catastrophic results. This rare video of an Alabama tornado was captured by an ABC 3340 news photographer. The twister touched down near Tuscaloosa last year, killing one person. It injured about a dozen others and leveled a number of homes and businesses.
Well, the front part in the dining room, the roof lifted up and tore the ceiling out of it. It's up about 6 inches. Post right from under the carport. All these back windows are blown out except the kitchen windows, blown into the rooms, and glass everywhere, you know.
A much stronger tornado roared through northeast Alabama on Palm Sunday in 1994. It killed 28 people in Alabama and Georgia, including 20 members of the Goshen United Methodist Church. They were in the middle of a morning worship service when the tornado struck and never heard the warning, which was issued 12 minutes earlier.
As I approached, I described the scenes that I was observing at that point. Power poles being down, a house gone, completely gone. Vehicles around the churchyard was scattered from all over the place, and the roof had collapsed.
On November 15th, 1989, a massive tornado tore through the southern part of Huntsville. More than 20 people died, and another 100 or so were injured. Homes and apartment buildings were reduced to rubble. Shopping centers were leveled, all in a matter of seconds. This afternoon tornado was on the ground around 4:30 when many people were driving home from work. Some of those killed were people trapped in their cars. It's been 20 years since a tornado of that magnitude struck Birmingham. The Smithfield Estates tornado of April 4th, 1977 was a rare F5 with winds in excess of 261 miles per hour. The death toll exceeded 20 in that Tuesday afternoon disaster. Some people walked almost 1 mile to get help as rescue vehicles couldn't get into the affected area because of fallen trees and downed power lines. There is no doubt that a tornado like that will hit the Birmingham metropolitan area again. It is not a matter of if, but when. And while we can't predict when that will happen, we can tell you how important it is for you to be prepared for such a disaster. Preparedness, warning, and response are the keys to saving lives during a tornado. Just as we have a responsibility to warn you before a tornado strikes, you have the responsibility of putting yourself in a position to hear severe weather warnings and to prepare a plan for your family. We all must work together to prevent loss of life during the next Alabama tornado outbreak. Tornadoes in Alabama, they will indeed happen again. As bad as they are, there are actually some good things about tornadoes. The best thing of all, they don't happen very often. You might live to be an old person in this state and never see one your entire life. It takes a very odd set of circumstances for a tornado to form. Another good thing about tornadoes, they're small. They're not large storms. They affect only a small part of any specific county. And finally, they don't stay on the ground for a long time. Most tornadoes will stay down for 10 or 20 minutes and then they go back up in the clouds. But needless to say, there are bad things about tornadoes. Worst thing about tornadoes, of course, the wind. In a tornado, the wind speeds can vary from 80 to approximately 300 miles per hour. In addition, short-term warnings are a problem. Even with advanced Doppler radar, sometimes the warnings can be only a matter of minutes. And in addition, tornadoes can happen any time of day or night. That means they can happen at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They can happen at 3 o'clock at night. Of course, our job here is to give you information about saving your life. And coming up on Storm Alert 98, we'll track the minutes leading up to one of Alabama's deadliest tornadoes. Was there no warning given, or was there simply no one listening? And are your children safe from severe weather while they're at school or daycare? Find out what your teachers need to do to protect your children as Storm Alert 98 rolls on. One of Alabama's worst tornado tragedies occurring on Palm Sunday, 1994, March the 27th of that year. A large tornado ripped through the Goshen United Methodist Church near Piedmont, killing approximately 20 members of the church. The next day, many of the newspapers' headlines said, "Tornado strikes church without warning." But you see, that wasn't true. Let's run through the warning process on that day. First off, on March 27, 1994, at 5:45 in the morning, the National Weather Service issued a strongly worded statement indicating a strong risk of severe thunderstorms that day. 9:18 that Sunday morning, the Storm Prediction Center issues a tornado watch for much of the state of Alabama. At exactly 11:27 a.m., a tornado warning is issued. That, of course, means a tornado is actually down on the ground for northern Calhoun and southern Cherokee counties, including Goshen and Piedmont. And then 12 minutes later, at 11:39, the church was destroyed. In that case, there was an excellent warning. The people in the church didn't hear it. So part of having a plan is having a way of hearing warnings. And, of course, the best way of doing that is a NOAA weather radio in your home and at your place of worship.
That's right. Like James just pointed out, the best thing to have is a plan of action, not only for yourself, but also your family and your children. And you should also have a place of safety that you can go to in the event of a tornado, whether it's at your office, whether it's at your home, or even a place where you worship.
Tornadoes can strike anytime, anywhere, and being safe may just be a matter of knowing what to do during that time. Brenda DeLadun has a package now showing us exactly what schools do with your children when we have severe weather and tornadoes.
When severe weather hits, there's nothing we can do to stop it. Scenes like this can make us all feel helpless. But there are some important steps your child's school or daycare administrator can take to make sure your child is protected as much as possible. Here at the Jewish Community Center, Robin Smith is proud to show us her plan.
There's one of these maps in each classroom, and it tells the evacuation route in case of a fire. It tells where the children how they should exit the building, and also it maps out the areas that here are in yellow, tell where they should go in case of a tornado, the interior hallways. And
I would, take a look at the some of the things in there, especially the evacuation and hosting type thing.
Okay. Representatives from the Emergency Management Agency check in with administrators like Robin Smith to help perfect their plans.
One of the most important parts of a plan is to make sure that your school is informed early, that they'll be warned in the event of a tornado. And one way to do it is to make sure your school has a weather radio. Robin Smith says it's an important part of their plan.
If I have it on alert there, anytime there's bad weather, it'll make a loud siren noise, and then we can press the button and find out exactly what the weather conditions are.
And once they receive that, have plans and procedures to alert the faculty or the student of the school.
This is a tornado drill. Will everyone please follow the tornado action plan?
And they know what action to take. The safest places are the interior areas of whatever building. Evacuate the higher levels down to the lowest floor. Stay away from glass and doors.
But while checking your school's tornado plan, don't forget the rest.
You certainly want to make sure that the school has a plan in place for all major emergencies.
That means for natural disasters such as a tornado, fire, flood, and a hazardous materials spill. And the way the school prepares children for an emergency is important too.
We make it a fun learning experience for them. We want to educate them, but not frighten them.
And here at the Jewish Community Center, the children seem to be getting the right message. Listen to what this little girl says when I ask her where she should go if the weather is bad.
Go outside.
Go out where?
Into the house.
That's good. Very good. Are you safe there?
Oh, look at these big boys.
How did you feel when they told you to go in the hallway? Was it fun? Or was it scary?
Fun.
It was fun. Well, that's the way it should be.
I travel to schools, as we all do, and quite frankly, schools in this state do an excellent job of having a severe weather plan in place. But of course, that's just one part of having a severe weather plan. Let's talk about some simple tips that could save your life or maybe someone in your family's life during severe weather. These are the keys. First off, you must have a way of hearing the warnings and the best way is NOAA Weather Radio.
Yeah, NOAA weather radios are great, and once you get the warning, you need to have a safety plan, and that's not only at home. There are a few places you need to think about besides being at home. Let's talk about at home, at church, at work, and at school.
And let me say this as well, it's awfully important that once you have that plan together, you share it with the entire family or the employees, and of course the basic points in the safety plan: small room, away from windows, lowest floor, near the center. And whatever you do, don't open your windows before a tornado. We learned a long time ago it doesn't work that way. Before the pressure difference has a chance to do any damage, the windows will open themselves with bricks and boards flying through them, and if you're standing there, that's certainly a horrible place to be. Pick that safe place, be sure the kids know, and you'll be okay this tornado season. And of course, tornadoes aren't the only weather hazards we face in Alabama.
No, there's a very large weather phenomenon called a hurricane, and it does affect Alabama during the summer months. Coming up next, of course, we'll be talking about these tropical storms and worth keeping an eye on here in Alabama. All that's coming up next on Storm Alert 98. Following severe weather season here in Alabama, we have another season we always focus our attention on, and that's hurricane season. And we do have hurricanes which do affect our coastal regions here in Alabama. But one thing in particular about hurricanes is they don't happen that often. But when they do, they're an incredible force of nature. The hurricane. It's one of the most powerful weather phenomena. It generates enough energy to run the city of New York for nearly 3 months, covers up to 500 miles at a time, and has cost nations billions of dollars in damages. From June to December, U.S. forecasters carefully watch what's called the Intertropical Convergence Zone. That's a region of warm ocean water, tropical air, and warm temperatures running concurrent to our equator. It's where most of North America's tropical systems are born, rotating cyclones of destruction that create havoc along coastal regions and inland as well. It doesn't matter how far you live from the coast. 1979, Hurricane Frederick slams into Alabama. It becomes the most destructive hurricane in the state's history. Since then, Alabama has weathered a number of other tropical systems, but they have all left their mark with either massive flooding, downed trees, and power lines. 1995, Hurricane Opal moved through the state, including Birmingham, as well as Anniston in northeast Alabama. 80-mile-per-hour winds and torrential rains pelted the inland cities. Small tornadoes skipped across the state, and 2 people were killed. All the destruction and death happened nearly 300 miles from the coast. In 1997, Hurricane Danny moves into Alabama, causing some damage as well as flooding. But it's Tropical Storm Alberto, which brought nearly 30 inches of rain and flooding to South Alabama. Hurricanes are classified on a scale from 1 to 5, 5 being considered catastrophic. Northeast side of a hurricane is traditionally the strongest part of the storm. It is where you find the strongest winds, heaviest rains, and most tornadoes. A few tips for surviving such storms. Always have a backup source of light, like a lantern or candles or even a flashlight, and keep a good supply of batteries on hand. Since it may be days before water is safe to drink, especially in flood-prone areas, store some in plastic jugs, or you can fill a bathtub with water and then use it to cook with. And certainly, non-perishable foods are important to have on hand. Devise a plan to where you might be when this storm moves in. If you live in a flood-prone area, find a safer place to stay. Other storms like these can drop anywhere from 5 to 10 inches of rain, and in some cases as much as 20 to 30. Keep a radio or battery-operated television on hand. That way you can keep up with any new developments. Remember, ABC 3340 will provide you with extensive, continuous coverage of breaking weather events, such as a hurricane.
A minimal hurricane, the pressure dropping a tad, the moving motion now northeast at 6, and that's not very fast for a hurricane. This thing could drop some incredibly heavy amounts of rain on parts of the central Gulf Coast.
Now, a good thing about hurricanes is they don't happen that often, but when they do, they can be very potent. One of the most notable storms to ever hit the Gulf Coast was in 1979, when Alabama's coastline was hit by Hurricane Frederick. This was a Category 5 hurricane as it made its way inland, basically wiping out not only Dauphin Island, but also wiping out much of the Gulf Shores area. Damage was very extensive. And we have also had other storms that have made long tracks, including Hurricane Frederick. And you can see the track of this storm started well out into the Atlantic Ocean across the Intertropical Convergence Zone, or the ITZ. But this storm not only continued to grow, but it also continued a very steady pattern as it made its way across the Caribbean as well as Cuba and eventually into the Gulf and across Alabama. As we look at our next graphic here on Tropical Storm Alberto, it wasn't necessarily a Hurricane Frederick, but this was a very damaging storm for parts of our state. Tropical Storm Alberto started just off of the western coast of Cuba and moved inland, but the problem with Alberto was steering currents. The upper level winds were not able to push this system out of Alabama, and tremendous amounts of rainfall fell on southeast Alabama and initially helping to break a levee which flooded the city of Elba, totally devastating the city as it still continues to repair today. Our next graphic will show Hurricane Opal. This is a storm which many of us remember just a couple of years ago as it made its way through the state. And with this storm, it continued to maintain its strength as it made its way inland, also claiming 2 lives in northeast Alabama as it made its way across the Gadsden area. You can see the track of Hurricane Opal starting in a completely different place across the Yucatan Peninsula, then making its way back out into parts of the Gulf of Mexico and eventually getting a drift towards the north and moving across Alabama and then into the eastern Great Lakes. But storms like these are ones which we have to watch carefully. Hurricane Danny. Just a year ago, we had Hurricane Danny make its way onshore, a minimal hurricane, but still one notable, not only bringing a great deal of rain, but also very strong winds to the coastal regions. And these actually are the type of hurricanes we would much rather see make their way onshore. But still, we felt the effects of it as it made its way onto shore, and not only here in Alabama, but along the Gulf Coast. You can see some of the rainfall totals there on the right, as well as the track of Hurricane Danny as it made its way through Alabama, covering much of the real estate across the state. As we move on to our tips for surviving hurricanes, one thing you should always keep in mind, they don't happen often, but when they do, the first to go is power. And usually you need a backup light source, whether it be candles or a flashlight. Also, when you do think about flooding, like we have seen with these systems, you certainly need to have additional drinking water, especially in a flood-prone area. Next tip, as we move on, you'll see non-perishable foods. It's always good to have those in place, especially when a storm like this is moving through. And last but not least, devise a plan for you as well as your family in the event of a hurricane. Know where you'll be, as well as what you'll do when this storm makes its way inland.
While hurricanes spin up mostly in the summer, winters can dish out their own sense of harsh reality. Coming up next, we'll show you why snowstorms show so much havoc in Alabama and also why they're so hard to predict.
And a little later, we'll move on to the games we all love to play. We'll show you how weather impacts everything from big-time college football to the worst amateur golfer you've ever seen. Those stories and much more coming up when Storm Alert 98 continues. Stay with us.
I'm a big fan of snow, but it can cause a lot of problems in Alabama, especially when it comes with ice in the form of winter storms. And it's really difficult to predict in Alabama. We try our best, but at times we get surprised a lot. March 1993, the most intense snowstorm in the 20th century slams into northern Alabama. More than a foot falls in many parts of central Alabama, followed by record-breaking cold. Everything in Birmingham, Tuscaloosa, and Anniston comes to a halt. When it's over, 14 people are dead. Property damage exceeds $50 million. And every city, town, and crossroads in Alabama has seen snow. Fortunately, the storm was forecast almost a week in advance. Without the early warning, the situation may have been much worse. However, this past December, 2 smaller snowstorms surprised forecasters. One formed unexpectedly over Mississippi and dropped as much as 6 inches of snow over parts of central Alabama. A second snowstorm was forecast well in advance, but moved north of the area, leaving behind only a dusting. While snowstorms do cause problems at times for Alabama, ice storms are the biggest threat during winter. Ice causes more damage, brings down more power lines, and creates huge travel problems, both on the highway and in the air. A large number of Alabama's winter storms are a combination of snow and ice, and it is rare to find one without at least a little of the other. In 1985, an ice storm killed 5 people. Ice was a foot thick in Lauderdale County. Throughout the state, roads and bridges were coated, and 4 of the victims died in traffic accidents. Usually, these storms usher in much colder air, and that can be a double-edged sword. First, the weight of the ice or snow will pull down the power lines. Then, as the bitterly cold air moves in, people are without power when they need it most. People always have many questions when it comes to winter weather in Alabama. Why can't you forecast snow correctly? What is the most snow we've ever gotten? And what is the effect of El Nino on severe winter weather? Those are just a few of the questions we will try to answer here tonight. A lot of questions about snowstorms and winter storms across Alabama. It tends to fascinate everybody, and they like to talk about it a lot. They do ask the questions a lot. What was the most snow? And we're going to take a look at that. If you'll look at this graphic, it's going to show you, of course, the winter storm in March of 1993, where every inch of Alabama saw snow accumulating on the ground. The bullseye there right along the Jefferson-Shelby County line, where they saw 17 inches of snow officially, and some reports upwards of 20 inches of snow. Of course, you can see the total snowfall map on your left there. Of course, that's where it affected the entire East Coast and moved up through some places receiving over 40 inches of snow. So not only was that the worst snowstorm for Alabama, but it affected most of the East Coast, and most states would report that as their worst snowstorm. Let's talk about winter storms and exactly how do you define a winter storm? Well, there's no preset definition, but you can safely say that heavy snow with accumulations of 2 inches or more will help to cause a winter storm or a winter storm warning. Another thing that we look at, of course, is freezing rain and sleet, and that's the killer here in Alabama. It's not the snow as much as the ice. When we talk to folks up north, they always kid us about driving in the snow, but the simple fact is they don't have to deal with the ice. Up north, most of the time, it's pure snow. And usually with a winter storm, weather may occur for an extended period of time. That means that it's not going to be a very short snowfall. It's going to be an extended period where the snow and ice is accumulating. Some of the tips that we tell you for winter storms, you know they're coming in. You need an additional source of heat. That's the first thing to go, electricity, as the ice or snow pulls down the power lines. And then you need to remember, no driving except in emergencies. Don't get out and look at the snow. Just enjoy it at your house. And last but not least, have a plan when a storm is moving in. Usually we'll let you know in enough time that the storm is moving our way, and we'll tell you that you need to go ahead and get your plan together. Don't go out and buy bread and milk. That usually perishes first. If it was me, I'd buy some soft drinks, maybe some Twinkies or junk food. That stuff's going to last forever.
Okay, we're not finished just yet. Coming up, we'll answer the questions to our weather quiz, and we'll take a close-up look at how storms can threaten the games we play and what you should do to stay safe. Keep it right here on ABC 3340. Welcome back to Storm Alert 98. By the way, John, why can't we forecast snow correctly sometimes?
I thought I was going to be able to get around that one. James, the problem with snow in Alabama, we're always right on the dividing line between rain and snow. That's filtering around and moving around constantly. If we miss it by 25 or 50 miles, people who thought they were only going to get rain are going to get snow, and folks who thought they were going to get snow get rain. And that's usually the problem with forecasting snow in Alabama.
Forecasting snow in Alabama is the main reason I have no hair.
Well, in a perfect world, the sun would be out on just about every sporting event or everything that you're associated with. But there are days when the weather just doesn't want to cooperate. And in the case of severe weather, that can usually lead to a situation which is dangerous for everyone. Jeff Spiegel has more in this special report, our Storm Alert report of 98.
Legion Field, December 3rd, 1983.
There was a potential tornado heading our way, and we got with Simpson Pepper, who was our PA man, and got him to make an announcement to at least let people know that that possibility existed.
I was in that press box, and that thing was shaking, and you know, just hope and pray that the fans and everybody would be okay.
You may not remember the score of the 1994 Alabama-Ole Miss game, but you probably remember the storm.
The lightning struck, and it hit a ABC cameraman. Some of our coaches were tinged a little bit by some lightning that came through their headsets.
On November 1st, severe weather delayed the start of the Tide Louisiana Tech game. White turned to a familiar source to help him track that storm.
Hello, I'm James Spann. The system is called Pinpoint.
Now, this is my idea of a perfect day, and it's also a perfect day in the world of those who oversee your children's sports leagues. You don't need an umbrella on a day like this, and certainly you can play outdoors. But you know what they say about the weather? It's always changing. And when it does, a decision has to be made. Now, in some cases, like this one, the decision is obvious. But sometimes, the decision is very unpopular.
No matter what you tell these mamas and papas and kids that it's too wet to play, they always want to play. They want to play.
I keep playing. I don't think the heavy stuff's going to come down for quite a while.
The movie Caddyshack made a joke out of playing golf in the rain.
There are some couple heavy spots in there.
But at Tanny Hill National, weather is serious business. In fact, it's part of their business.
People call the golf shop frequently, expecting us to be weathermen. So it's important that we know as much as James Spann would know.
Well, that's a stretch, but when it comes to weather, Tanny Hill golfers have come to put their trust in the guys at the pro shop.
We can pinpoint this thing within 5 or 10 minutes as to when a system's going to hit us.
And when severe weather is on the way, the golfers know it. Still, some folks just don't know when to quit.
I tell you, people love this game of golf, and they don't want to stop. They want to get that putt in the hole before they pick up and come into the clubhouse.
While Tanny Hill's technology can keep you safe, it's still no match for common sense. Jeff Spiegel, ABC 3340.
A funny scene there with the golfer getting struck by lightning. Lightning, one of the biggest problems in Alabama. I wanted to say real quickly here, thanks to the National Weather Service. They helped us out a lot with our graphics here, and National Weather Service in Birmingham is a joy to work with, and they always help us out when we need it.
All right, fellas, time to answer that ABC 3340 weather quiz. Maybe you saw the questions in your local newspaper. Well, here we go. Let's give the right answers. First question, which Alabama county has experienced the most tornadoes since 1950? Madison, Jefferson, Tuscaloosa, or Baldwin? Would you believe the right answer is?
Baldwin.
Baldwin. On the Alabama Gulf Coast, they have a lot of tornadoes. Those are typically the small ones, though. 57, by the way, the total for Baldwin. Jefferson with 55, with smaller amounts for Madison and Tuscaloosa. Next weather question. We mentioned this earlier. If you paid attention, you should know the answer to this. A thunderstorm becomes severe with winds of how many miles per hour? The right answer is 58. That's the same as 50 knots. That's typically when damage begins to occur. Question number 3. During a tornado warning, you should pick up your child from school. Even though that's a natural reaction, the answer there is false. The worst place to be is a car, a truck, a van, or a bus. Let the kids stay in school. The peak time for tornadoes to occur in Alabama is noon to 7 p.m. That's when the air is most unstable. And finally, question number 5, our pinpoint Doppler radar shows wind, rain, exact arrival time of storms, close-up views down to your street level, or all of the above. And you fellows know the answer to this. All of the above, obviously. That radar system has been a lifesaver during times of severe weather. We can not only show our own pinpoint Doppler radar data, but the NextRad data as well, coming from the National Weather Service, and that's a wonderful tool to use. But again, we want to thank you for watching tonight. Alabama's weather is wild and it's wacky, but we promise the entire ABC 3340 weather team will be here when we have a tornado, a hurricane, a winter storm to take care of you and your family. We promise not to let you down. Again, thanks for tuning in this evening, and we'll see you.
52 currently in Crossville, Tennessee.